Hi, everyone. Dr. Sheftall again with Truth in Science. Um, this is part 3 of a 5-part series on uh, looking at things. I call it critically. What I mean is noticing details and relationships of structures in the face or in a painting or something like that. So tonight, part 3 is going to be an analysis of a very famous painting. And let's go ahead. This is the bona fides page, which we'll skip, but everyone, please check out my Patreon page and consider becoming a patron. The picture for this part is actually a picture from a slide from part 2, which I put in just to remind everyone that there are 2 other parts before this. Part 1 is important because it introduces the principles that we apply to all the other parts. Part 2 is an example of a patient that I repaired their badly damaged face using those principles. And in the next part, I'm going to do that again. But tonight's is about a painting, and it's going to be pretty interesting. There's a lot of people that don't agree with me, but I'm going to try to prove my point. This is the Salvator Mundi, supposedly painted by Leonardo da Vinci. And I'm going to go over a lot of examples of parts of this painting that are so incorrectly done, not just poorly done, but incorrectly done, that I just do not think he could possibly have painted this picture. So keep an open mind, but be very critical of what I say, and see if you agree or you don't. And you can make those comments in the comment section below. I did this a couple of years ago when this was very hot in the news. It had just been auctioned. And I got a lot of interest in it. Not about 90% of the people agreed with me. And I got some very, very complimentary comments. And I was felt very fortunate that people listened to me. And because, at that time, every expert that I saw on television disagreed with me. And also Christie's had just auctioned the painting off for $400 million plus a $50.3 million buyer's premium. So there were a lot of people that believed this was painted by Leonardo da Vinci and still do. I watch videos of experts sometimes, and they're all trying to explain why he painted it. And also Walter Isaacson gave lectures on it, and I just think they're all wrong. And let me explain why. Again, this was a big deal just a year or so ago. Here's Walter Isaacson, Jane Pauley. Here's the auctioneer at Christie's where it was sold. All right, a bit of history first. These are Byzantine portraits, and you can see just that they're very two-dimensional and they don't conform to reality very well. Look at the fingers on this painting, and look at the head on the baby Jesus. It looks like an old man on a body that's not proportional at all for a baby, and it's just horrible. And then now the Byzantine period ended in 1450, and Leonardo was born in 1452. So look what he did so quickly after that period. He just revolutionized art. And you can see in this this painting or this drawing of the Virgin Mother and baby Jesus blessing St. John the Baptist there. It's just amazing. None of the people featured in the drawing are looking straight ahead. The relationship between the Virgin and the Virgin Mother interacting here, and between the baby Jesus and St. John the Baptist, is just beautifully done. Tremendous composition. Just so many things you could say about this. And this is a painting of Virgin and Child with Saint Anne. And it's just magnificent, just tremendous. Just revolutionized art. So here's the painting we're going to talk about today. And there's some things on here that just in my mind, absolutely rule out the possibility, that Leonardo painted this painting. Just to show you one, I'm gonna list about 10 things in the order that I noticed them when I looked at the painting. And this is the first thing I noticed, was that the composition is very cramped in the frame. And to show that it's not cropped in some strange way, this is an actual photograph of the auction, and it shows the actual painting, which was up here on the wall, is cramped in the same exact way. So there's no cropping going on here. But this is a very amateur mistake to crowd the subject with the edge of the surface that you're painting it on. It happens a lot when you draw the face first, and then when you draw the body and you go, oh no, I'm running out of space here. But anyway, there are other paintings that I'm going to show you in a second that you might think are also cramped, but they're really not, because nothing important is near the edge. Where here, this hand is very important in the meaning of the painting, and so is the orb, and they're both way too close to the edge. If you look at a business card with the letters too close to the edge, you have to throw it away and do it again. It looks horrible. Okay, so here's an example of another painting that Leonardo did do. And the Mona Lisa, of course, looks very pleasant and situated properly in the frame. All of the action is taking place right here. And it's not anywhere near nothing important is near the edge of the frame. Whereas in this case, it almost looks like his shoulders being held in to keep it inside the frame. You might think that maybe something was taken off the sides through its long history, but it's painted on a panel of wood. So that's not very likely that they would have changed this, cut into the wood to do this. Sometimes you get canvas paintings that are cut out of their frame by a thief, and that can reduce the periphery, but not usually on a panel. And you might say, well, these are cramped. I mean, look, there's a tree here that's chopped in half, but the tree's not very important. And even the Virgin's robe here gets cropped a little bit on the side, but all the action's taking place right here in this painting, right here. And it's not anywhere near, nothing important is near the edge. Same with the drawing even, okay? Now, the next thing I noticed was the face, problems with the face. And again, the first thing I noticed were the eyes. They're crossed, okay? This eye, which is the right eye of the subject, to the left, as we look at it, is higher than this eye, okay? And I'll show you with some parallel lines in a second. The nose is curved like an open parentheses, like this. The neck is completely amorphous, okay? Which is very unusual for Leonardo. I'm going to show you some necks that he painted, which are beautiful. Okay. Again, I'm going to go through these in the order that I noticed them, and certainly a few mistakes, or maybe the choice of the artist type differences, are not anywhere near enough proof to be able to say that he did not paint this. But I'm going to show you some stuff later that, to me, just absolutely proves it. But anyway, let's look at the eyes for a second. So the eyes are crossed, number one. Number two, just look at how differently they're painted. I'm not talking really about asymmetry here. I'm just talking about the shape of the eyes is just like not anything like the way Leonardo paints. And I'm going to show you some eyes in a second, but let me point it out now. So the lower lid, I think might have a bigger picture next. Oh yes, much better. Sorry about that. You can see the curved nose here, which is one thing. But look at the upper lid on the left, on the subject's left, it's kind of a smooth curvilinear line here. And then look over here, it kind of goes up and down, okay? Again, we have very attractive people in real life with asymmetrical eyes, but these eyes are painted very poorly. And I'm gonna show you why in just a second. The light source for this painting is on this side of the subject. That's why you have the light on the nose here and why you have the shadow predominantly here. But the light on the lower lid here is correct, but over here it's not correct. That's another kind of amateurish mistake. And let me just point out that the eyes are painted very poorly here. Okay. Now let me show you these lines I put in. This eye is higher than this eye. And here's the proof right here. Here is the shadow line, the upper shadow line on the upper lid of the right eye. When you go straight across, you're above the shadow line here, the crease here, okay? Here's the shadow line of the right upper lid, and if you go straight across, it's much higher than the shadow line of the left upper lid. And the shadow line of the lower lid is up into the globe of the left eye here. Okay, so this eye is much higher than this eye. Now let me just back it up a second. You can almost see it, like if you look carefully there, you can see clearly this is much higher than the other eye. Okay. That's what I noticed, and then I had the computer draw perfectly parallel horizontal lines in and to prove it, and there you have it. And this lower lid is lower than this one. You can see very easily. Okay. It's not enough to say you didn't paint it yet. We're getting to that. Now, I talked about the amorphous neck a couple slides ago, and here you see it again. But look at all the other examples of the paintings of Leonardo. Look at how exquisite he painted these necks, okay? Also, I'm gonna show you a close-up of these two paintings right here, and we're gonna look at the eyes, and you're gonna see a tremendous difference compared to what you just saw. Look at the detail of the eyes there. And now I'm gonna go ahead just a little and show you these two paintings. Look at the detail and the perfection really, and how beautifully these eyes are painted. Okay. And look at the detail on the neck. Even the wrinkle lines on the neck, very subtle, but they're there. By the way, these are not the same person. They look a little bit alike, but not exactly. These are painted by Leonardo. This is Lady with an Ermine, and this is Portrait of an Unknown Woman. These were mistresses of the Duke of Milan. And Leonardo was in the court when he painted these two paintings. Now here's another thing that bothered me. Again, I haven't shown nearly enough yet to be able to claim that he did not paint this picture definitively, but I'm going to show you some more, and then I'm going to show you one that to me absolutely proves it. But I tried to put this line exactly in the center, and it might not be exactly in the center. It's a tiny bit over, but because I couldn't, every time I moved it this way, it clicked too far, but maybe there's something I don't know about how to do this perfectly, but I drew the rectangular box here, and it finished exactly on the edge of the gold frame there. So everything's the same distance from the center, okay? Now look at this. This hand is higher than this hand. And when you put one hand slightly higher than the other, the shoulder goes up a tiny bit, okay? Or it's the same. It can't be lower. That's all I want to prove there by telling you the difference in the height of the hands. But the shoulder is missing on this side. Now that you would think that would be impossible. And it certainly would be, Leonardo would never make a mistake like that. But let me just show you, in this case, or show you that the shoulder is missing, and then we'll leave it at that and move on to other things. But Leonardo would never make a mistake like this. If you go out from the center line over to this shoulder and then go the same distance this way, you can see the shoulders almost on the edge of the gold frame there. So there actually should be a little bit of blue paint here, but the real place where the blue paint is missing is between the thumb and the index metacarpal of the right hand. There should be blue paint in there, okay? If you go the same distance from here to here, and then go the same distance over here, you're right in the middle of the blue here. And it's missing over here, okay? And even if, like I said, even if you come down here and measure the distance to the blue there, right on the edge of the frame, and you go the same distance over here, you're in here and it should be blue here too. So this is a mistake that Leonardo would never make. Again, I will still say it's not enough to prove that he didn't paint it yet, but we're starting to accumulate a lot of things he would never do. I'm going to read you a quote at the end that reinforces my claim in as far as how much attention Leonardo gave to the detail in his paintings and everything. He just never would leave it like this. Now I'm going to give you a very quick anatomy lesson because I know a lot of people know this already, but let me just say this stuff because it's going to become real important in a second. These are the metacarpals, okay? These are the phalanges here. And I'm going to point at the joints. The red arrows point at the interphalangeal joints. This is the proximal interphalangeal joint of the index of my index finger here. This is the distal interphalangeal joint, okay? This is the metacarpal phalangeal joint here in green. And on the thumb, you see the same thing, right? You've got the metacarpal phalangeal joint right here. And on the other side of these joints is the knuckle, okay? And that's important in just a second. And here's the only interphalangeal joint of the thumb because there's only 2 phalanges in the thumb, okay? Uh-oh, don't tell me I missed something here. Okay. I think I will be able to skip this. I may have put one extra slide in. I sure hope I didn't make a mistake and skip an important slide. Okay, well, let me continue here. When you open the fingers of your hand, they will line up in a way such that lines through them will intersect at a single point. Okay, it doesn't matter how wide you separate your fingers, but if you do it homogeneously, let's say, the lines will intersect at a single point. If the fingers were closer together, obviously the line would intersect at a point that's off the page. So I had to spread the fingers basically as far wide as I could to get it to intersect on the page, on the picture. But this is true, okay? It's also true that if you make a slow fist, the lines through your curving fingers will also intersect at a single point. Now they'll intersect at a different point, but it'll be a single point. And if you look at your own hand while you do this, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. What that tells you is that the 4th and 5th digits, your ring finger and your pinky, have to point back in toward the center of the palm somewhat, okay? The long finger points straight down the palm, but of course there's only 4 fingers there, so it's displaced slightly to the index side, okay? And then the index has to point slightly back in toward the center from the other side, okay? This is very important because these 2 fingers are anatomically impossible. These fingers are pointing way out in right field here, okay? The index and the long finger are not drawn correctly here, anatomically. And I'm going to prove it in just a second. But you should be able to get an idea now that this index finger should be pointing back in toward the center of the palm here, okay? And the long finger should be right down the middle of the palm, again, displaced slightly to the index side because there's only 4 fingers. Now, let me give you some examples of some other hands that he has painted. Ah, yes, okay. Again, this is just the same thing that I just showed you. I don't know why there's 2 of them in there. Thought I had this all right. Okay. This is lady with an ermine, okay? And can you see that the fourth and fifth fingers are pointed slightly back toward the center of the palm? Because somebody said once that Leonardo might not have known this. Well, of course he knew all of this and much, much more about anatomy. He was a real student of anatomy. So he knew everything about this, and you see it reflected in his other paintings. So let me just continue on here. You've got the fifth finger pointing back toward the center and the ring finger. You've got the index finger on this side pointing slightly back toward the center from the other side. And of course, the long finger is straight down the middle, okay? Just like I showed you when I made the slow fist and opened my fingers. Okay, this is taken from the Mona Lisa, and you can see the same thing is going on. The pinky is pointing slightly back toward the center, so is the ring finger, and the index finger is pointing slightly back toward the finger from the other side with the long finger straight down the middle, okay? You can imagine the Mona Lisa making a slow fist, and the pinky is going to point strongly toward the center as you're making the fist, right? And the index is going to point in toward the center from the other side, okay? And that is not the case here at all. All right, now, because this is a mistake, it is impossible for him to not notice this and fix it, and especially not make it in the first place. This is just horrible. All right, now, I wanted to show you the proof, quote unquote, and here's how I did it. I took the painting and I measured from two well-known anatomical landmarks after I put my hand in as close a position as I could, palm-wise, to the painting. And here's how I know it's very close. You can see two knuckles here, which are the metacarpal phalangeal joints on the painting. And you can see two knuckles on my hand. Then I measured the distance from this knuckle to this knuckle, metacarpal phalangeal joint, and I copied that white line and moved it over to my hand and made sure that the zooming in or out of my hand was exactly the same as the painting. Okay, you with me so far? And I also did it in another dimension that we use as doctors. But I want you to look at this for a second. You can easily see the nail of the long finger there because it's twisted in a strange way, like I said, way out in right field, okay? You cannot see the nail on my hand for the long finger. It's not visible. And the index finger, of course, which is pointing back toward the center of the palm slightly, would make the index finger completely on, the nail completely on the other side of the finger here. You absolutely cannot see it. And you can actually see it here. You can see the nail of the index finger, which means it's pointed way over here somewhere, not back here like it's supposed to, okay? Anatomically impossible. And there's the other dimension. Let me see what the next slide is. Okay. Let me show you one more thing, or several other things about the hand that are just absolutely impossible. Now, this is the proximal interphalangeal joint of my index finger, okay? And you can see my thumb goes past it, considerably past it, right? Quite a bit. It's the proximal interphalangeal joint, okay? Now, if you go over to the painting, here's the proximal interphalangeal joint of the painting. And here's his thumb. It's way short of it. See, here's the joint. It's way short of it. This is the metacarpal phalangeal joint here, and it's barely past that. So this thumb is way too small for the palm and the size of the hand. It's tiny compared to everything else. Okay, look at my thumb compared to this thumb. Now you might say, well, he had tiny little fingers. Well, you can paint people with different features, but this is so far off, it's just freakish almost. It's so disproportionate to the palm of the hand. Let me give you another example. Just look at this side of the painting for a second. Just look at this. Don't look at the other one. Just look at this. Look at the relationship between my pinky, the size of my pinky versus the palm of the hand. We know the palms are the same. We've already measured them. Look at the relationship of my pinky in size to the palm. And then look at this. Look on this side now. Look at the pinky versus this palm. This pinky is tiny. It's not anywhere near big enough to look normal. Okay, look at my pinky on my palm, the ratio, and then look at this. These are anatomical mistakes that Leonardo would never make. He's painting the savior of the world here. That's another reason why when people say, oh, a lot of people have curved noses and a lot of people have eyes that are different heights and they have cross-eyed, but again, the savior of the world painted by Leonardo da Vinci is not going to have everyday problems that we all have unless they're, historical, biblical. He's going to paint this person in a magnificent way. And all these issues with a tiny thumb and tiny fingers that absolutely do not conform to the size of the palm. He would never do this. And that's just for the people who think it's a choice or something. This is anatomically impossible. He could never make a mistake like this with these fingers twisted that much. Try twisting your own fingers. You can't twist them like that, okay? Even with your left hand helping you twist the fingers, you can't do it, let alone try to do it without another finger kind of almost breaking your painted finger there. Okay. So you see where I'm going with this. That absolutely proves to me that Leonardo could not have painted this picture. Now, there's a big problem with this orb here because it doesn't conform to the laws of physics. And let me tell you why. The index of refraction of this orb is greater than that of air, okay? So if it's in contact with something, such as the palm, and it is in contact with the palm, you will get magnification of the feature that's in contact with the orb. But this fold in the gown here is not what happens when you have a spherical or curved surface of a entity with an index of refraction greater than that of air. And I'm going to prove it over here. This is a Colgate box here. And I'm going to slowly move this box in behind this glass, and it's filled with water. So it has an index of refraction greater than that of air. Okay. And I filled that glass with water and because I wanted to prove this instead of just talking about it without proof. Okay. So as I move the Colgate box in, and you can see the 25% free thing on the end there. When I move this Colgate box in this way, all of a sudden, boop, the end of the box appears on this side of the glass. And this is normal. This is what happens. If you look through this glass at a building, let's say that the grass is here and the top of the building is here, it'll be flipped upside down in the orb, okay? And this is what you're getting here. Now, you might say, well, the orb is touching his gown, and so it's magnified just like the palm, but actually that's impossible too. Let me explain why. Here's the shoulder. The arm, not the forearm, but the arm is hanging straight down. Elbows down here somewhere. You can't touch the orb to a gown that is on your body. Let me try to get it up a little so you can see. If your arm is out like this, okay, you can't touch the orb to your gown. You have to pull your shoulder way back like that to do it, okay? And that's not what's happening here, all right? So this is incorrect as far as physics is concerned, optics. Now, again, you could say he didn't know, but he was an expert in optics. He knew all about it. And this has been brought up to expert critics and Walter Isaacson when he gave the lectures explaining how this was painted by Leonardo da Vinci at the Aspen Institute and all that. And their explanation for why this does not conform to the laws of physics is that Leonardo painted it incorrectly on purpose to show that it was miraculous, like he was able to change the laws of physics, the savior of the world, I mean. But I think that's just a very weak argument, that Leonardo would paint an orb after all he knew about optics incorrectly on purpose, just to reflect on the divinity of Christ. It's a horrible argument, I think. And I think, again, this isn't hard proof that he didn't paint it, but it's just another of the series of 10 or 12 things that's just getting to be too much almost to believe that he could have painted this. But this hand, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely proves that there's no way he could have done this, could have made a mistake like that, anatomical mistake. Here's another soft thing, but it bothers me. Here's some other examples of Salvator Mundi painted by other people, sometimes with the same name, sometimes with different names. And these were painted when Leonardo was 20 years old here, and between 1480 and 1482. So this was 8 years later. So he knew about these paintings. And they are in the same pose almost that this painting is in. And I just don't believe he would paint something after someone else in the same pose. He just wasn't that kind of person. Salvator Mundi was painted sometime after 1507. We think it was painted between 1510 and 1515. So he would have known about the other examples. This is a commonly painted picture, and he just would have done it equally magnificent and divine, but he would have thought of his own way of doing it. He just wasn't the kind of person that would have copied the composition from the way everyone else had done it. Okay? In my opinion, he just wouldn't have done it. All right. Now let me go to this, because this is critical. I'm going to read you some quotes from people who knew all about Leonardo da Vinci, okay? Bearing in mind, I want you to think about the way the eyes are painted, the way the hand was painted, and the mistakes there that I pointed out. Now, these are anatomical mistakes now. This isn't the choice of an artist. And I want you to think about all those mistakes, and the amorphous neck and the curved nose and the orb that doesn't conform to the laws of physics as I read this, because this is going to hopefully bring home the point of how he never would have allowed something like that. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit of more information about it. This is from this person here. I'm not familiar with him, Lamazo. He said, whenever he began to paint, it seemed that Leonardo trembled, and he never finished any of the works he commenced, because so sublime was his idea of art. He saw faults even in the things that to others seemed miracles. In other words, he was so gifted in his ability to see renderings of anatomy and faces and expressions and everything, that he could see errors in it when other people thought it was just perfect, okay? Now, this is Goethe, and we all know who Goethe is, one of the greatest people in history as far as intellectual capacity. So let's look at this. But before we go any further, we must say a little more about Leonardo's personality and talents. The many gifts that nature bestowed upon him concentrated themselves primarily in his eye. Hence, although capable of all things, he appeared great above all as a painter. Hope I can move this thing. Yes. He did not rely simply upon the inner impulses of his innate, inestimable talent. He permitted no arbitrary, random stroke of the brush. Everything had to be deliberate and considered, from the pure proportions to which he devoted so much research, to the strangest monsters that he compiled out of contradictory figures. Everything had to be both natural and rational. But let's go back to this sentence here, which absolutely doesn't. There were no arbitrary random stroke of the brush. From the pure proportions to which he devoted so much research. I showed you how the pinky and the thumb were completely out of proportion with the palm of the hand that was painted in Salvator Mundi. And I showed you that the index and middle finger were twisted way over to the side such that something on the back of it was visible. In other words, it had to be twisted so far over, something that's way on the back had to be twisted so far around that you could actually see the nail. Now, that's a real amateur mistake. When you paint something and you want to include something that should not be visible from that perspective, less gifted painters do that a lot. Now, of course, it was done on purpose by Picasso and people like that. But in this era, the way paintings were made and painted, people didn't do that sort of thing unless it was a mistake. Like, Picasso can have a profile of a woman and have two eyes on one side of the profile. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about in this era, that isn't not what Leonardo, whoever painted that picture, they were not trying to do that. They were trying to depict that hand realistically, and it's not realistic at all. I mean, I'm no artist, but I would not have made a mistake like that on the eyes or the hand. And it's just impossible. This is Leonardo da Vinci. He was 500 years ahead of his time. All right, let's look at this and just look at this for a second. Anyone who can paint something like this, so sublime and beautiful, and look at the detail on the eyes. I'm telling you, if you try to copy this, and that's copying it, or if you paint your next door neighbor, whatever you want to do, if you get one of these lower lid lines not in the right direction or not with the right curvature based on the size of the globe for this size of a face, it will not look right. It will look horrible. And everything is lined up perfectly here. And the detail, I'm telling you, he could not have made those mistakes. This is a self-portrait, which is magnificent, of course. This is the Vitruvian Man. I just grabbed a couple pictures to show you, but this Leonardo was such a perfectionist. Now, let me just say one more thing. He had a horrible rivalry with Michelangelo. Michelangelo was 25 years younger. And they competed all the time, and they even engaged in verbal combat when they passed each other on the street. I read that the slab of marble that was given to Michelangelo, from which he created the statue of David, was first offered to Leonardo, and his plans did not work out. So then the beautiful marble slab that everyone agreed was beautiful was given to Michelangelo, and he created the statue of David out of it. I mean, think about how Leonardo must have felt. It was originally supposed to be on the periphery of the top of a building with other statues. But when people saw how magnificently Michelangelo completed the project, they wanted to put it in the most favored place in Florence. And Leonardo was on the Arts Council, and he voted against it. It must have really hurt him that that's what became of the slab that he had control of for a while. So imagine Leonardo painting this Salvator Mundi that we've looked at, and it being presented in Florence with a guy like Michelangelo, who was a bitter rival of Leonardo, walking up and looking at it and seeing all those mistakes that I just pointed out, and many more, I'm sure. I mean, he certainly would have been able to point out more than me, but he would have certainly seen the ones that I pointed out. And I mean, he would have just laughed his head off walking out of the building. I mean, it just would have humiliated Leonardo. There's just no way he could have done something like that. Given that other people would have seen it and known that he did it. I mean, it's just horrible. It's impossible. that he could have painted that picture. Now, everybody disagrees with me. I watch art critics talk about it. I watch, I mean, think about it. You know, Christie's auctioned that painting for $400 million. And in 30 seconds from me seeing a photograph of it on the internet, I knew that he hadn't painted it because it was so many mistakes were on it. I mean, the first time I looked at it, I said, oh, he couldn't have painted this. The fingers aren't even oriented correctly, you know? And look at those horrible eyes. I mean, and the neck is just completely amorphous. You can't tell where it begins or ends. It's just all shadow. He didn't do things like that. So again, that's my presentation on based on my eye that Leonardo could not have possibly painted that picture. So that's the end of part 3. And part 4 is another patient that I reconstructed their face after a horrible acid burn. And I hope you'll join me for part 4. And thank you for watching. And I will see you in part 4, hopefully soon. Thank you.